Forget about mortgage rates going up a point in about a month. College loan rates have effectively doubled in a day. Because Congress failed to act, starting today, interest rates on Stafford College loans shot up from 3.4% to 6.8%. A wake-up call for students who've benefited from their own Ben Bernanke forced rate fix for years now, but for whom the party is ending now. But before you shed tears for them, save a few for taxpayers, probably like yourself, who've been spending tens of billions shielding them, supporting college loan programs that get pricier, and as a result, college tuitions that get even pricier. So where's the lobby for those guys, for us guys, or to these guys, Hadley, Heath, and Matt Schlapp, and Steve Laser? Hadley.
You know, our president likes to talk a lot about fairness, and I would frame this policy debate in terms of fairness. Our current policy is unfair not only to taxpayers, but to other groups of people as well, including middle-class Americans who never went to college, or people who are prudent decisions to go to college in a more cost-effective way. We're rewarding bad behavior by subsidizing student lending that, you know, unfortunately the rate's going up, but to put it in perspective, we're returning to a rate that we had 4 years ago.
Well, we're kind of going back to the historical norms, too. But, Matt, it is sticker shock, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for student that's got to deal with these loans. I mean, I just paid mine off about 5 years ago. You know what happened, Neil, when I paid off my student loans? I thought I was all done with having all these collectors over my head. Guess what? I just looked at my share of the national debt. It's a lot bigger than what those school loans were. And that's what Americans need to realize across the country, which is there's no free lunch. There are great costs to these big subsidies like the student loan program. And yes, there's a good in getting our kids college educations, but there's got to be a better way than impoverishing us all in this debt.
You know, Steve, you could make a case of that. In other words, that the more we keep helping students with subsidized education and, you know, low-rate loans, the more the colleges feel empowered to keep jacking up the tuition. Maybe if this does nothing more than to slow that process, I would like to think, stop that process, it might be a good long-term thing.
You know, you have a good point there, but I think if we step back and look at this for a moment, it's $14 billion a year is what we're talking about. That's less than 1/2% of the total budgeted outlays per year. That's really a small investment when you think about it in terms of our future, in terms of our children.
But that's not my point. What about the idea that any help via this way, manufactured interest rates, are just manufacturing an excuse for colleges to hike their tuitions?
And I think one of the ways that you address that, I think you might have a point there. One of the ways you address that is you try to divert or focus more kids to maybe going to community colleges for the first 2 years, which their tuition is about $3,000 a year.
But you wouldn't forcibly set rates, though, right?
No, I wouldn't forcibly set rates.
Because that's what this is, forcibly setting rates. By the way, I applied the same to Ben Bernanke, fixing rates in an unnatural way.
I think that's going to happen naturally because I think, you know, in the case of my daughter, for instance, she looked at my experience with student loans. I'm still paying my student loans. And actually 2 scholarships, she worked very hard, and I think kids are going to try to make other arrangements.
She's your kid. She's a genius. But, I mean, not everyone is so blessed. Hadley, I'm just wondering where this is going because I'm hoping, to my point earlier, that colleges will learn there is no free money from Washington because that emboldens you to keep screwing kids. And I think that maybe if they know there's no more money at the well, they'll stop this drip, drip, drip of increases.
Right. Steve said something about education being a good investment, but I say let individual students, their families, and individual lenders decide what a good investment is for each person. You know, for some people, community college may be a good step. For other people, a 4-year college degree may be what's best. But we're all individuals, and if there's one thing that's true, we pay more for things that we try to pay for together.
Well, we do have it mixed up. But one plumber has people, and his people have people. So all I know, he's doing something right. But where are we going with this here? Because I do agree, you know, with this Steve point out, it is a bit of a sticker shock, and you double rates on people that have been getting used to rates being low for the same time. We could say the same about the Medicare tax, you know, vacation we're taking for a couple of years. When it was put back in, it was a big sticker shock. I get annoyed when we forcibly try to fix anything. It invariably creates a bigger fix.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this case, everyone can look at President Obama, and I suppose you could look at the Republicans and Democrats on the Hill, too, and say this is one of the consequences of not getting a big 10-year budget deal, is that you have to deal with these emergencies. And this is an emergency that students and parents are looking at. And this ought to put more pressure on the president, and especially his surrogates who are running around and blaming Republicans for this. That's completely irresponsible. This is something that could have been fixed in those budget negotiations.
But it wasn't, was it?
It wasn't fixed.
No.
You know, the other side of this is that China is about to pass us in creation of intellectual property and things like that. We need to be the leaders in intellectual property. Well, then they've got double the amount then.
Okay.
But they're about to pass us. We need to be the innovators. We need to be the ones producing all the intellectual property. So what I really am concerned about here is as we try to fix this issue with education, let's make sure we're not changing ourselves in our future. I disagree with Hadley. I think it's a national issue with individuals bearing some of the responsibility, but it's almost a national security issue.
Hadley?
You know, when it comes to education, there are some who would argue that we have oversold college. And ultimately, my concern is that individuals and the people who are paying can no longer hold universities accountable for what they're selling. You know, we're at a generation of young adults who 50% or so of recent college graduates unemployed or underemployed. We've got to question whether or not that degree is really getting the bang for the buck that it promises, and about 2% of people who go to college don't graduate within 6 years. So we're taking out loans and not seeing the benefit.
The more I'm hearing a future mom saying, "So you're on your own," but we shall see. Stick around, guys. We're going to have you back a little later in the show. In the meantime, maybe it is hot outside. Forget grin and bear it. More like grid and bear it. That